right, my name is Audrey. I am on the business development team of Continuum CFO Group, and today here we have Ina Masten with us to discuss burnout and what business owners can do to recognize and prevent burnout. This will be there will be a relaxed Q&A discussion for the after the 15-minute presentation, so we can talk strategies or discuss stories and see if there's any way that we can support each other during this time. This was all made possible by the connections we found on Alignable and the strong network that followed. Through this network, we collaborated with people who value the client relationship like we do in our programs, and this is why we're able to present this topic here today. So like I said earlier, we'll start with a presentation by Ina and go into a Q&A afterwards. So as you're watching along, feel free to jot down any questions you may have. This webinar is for you folks, and we want you to walk away with any questions answered. A little housekeeping before we get started. There is a, just a second. There is a replay of the webinar that will go out after this. So if you want to drop your email into the chat or feel free to direct message me, I'll make sure that you are on that list that gets the replay. And this is good just in case you have to hop off early. You can still get the full presentation and the full discussion afterwards. Also, this webinar is being live streamed on LinkedIn and Facebook, so you will be able to see the recording there. If you don't want to be recorded, that's okay. The chat is your friend. I will be keeping an eye on the chat and raise any questions or comments you may have on your behalf. Similarly, if you do have any technical issues during the call, feel free to message me in the chat and I will support you there. That way, Ina can go ahead and continue on with the presentation and the discussion. That's it. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and to leave that in the chat. Otherwise, we can go ahead and get started. Take it away, Ina.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Happy Monday. So this is kind of more in the series that I've been doing around leadership, around when owners start to really move into that CEO position, really start becoming the CEO. And so this is called Leading Through the Stretch. So it's how to run a business without running yourself into the ground. And as Audrey said, burnout. So just remember, the job is long, the week is finite, and both things are true. So there's no version of this where you only work the easy hours. So that's, unless you sell your business or have somebody else doing it for you, you're in the business. So there's the trap that leaders who treat sustainability as a soft skill, and then they end up choosing between themselves and the company. So when you put yourself in that situation, eventually both lose. So endurance is a leadership skill. So it's not a personality trait. It's not a virtue. It's a practice capacity. You have to build it deliberately the same way you'd build a P&L. So this briefing is about how we do that. So there's 4 ways that leaders break, meaning that, they get to that point of they just can't take it anymore. And none of them look dramatic. But burnout rarely arrives as a crisis. It arrives as a series of compromises you stop noticing. So the first one is the adrenaline default. You only feel productive when something is on fire. So you're like constantly putting out little fires here and there and everywhere. And calm starts to feel like you're falling behind. So then there's the slow drain, that nothing is wrong exactly. You're just a little less curious, a little less generous every month. So slowly over time, you're less present. And then the third one is the lonely fortress, that you stop telling anyone how it's actually going. The mask becomes load bearing. And then the final is the identity collapse. The company isn't doing what you hoped, and somehow that becomes a verdict on you as a person. So the cost lands on the company, not just on you. So 76% of founders report symptoms of burnout in any given year. So that means, any time frame along the continuum of their company. And most don't tell anyone. They just don't admit to it. So 2.4 times more likely to a leadership team to make a major strategic error when its CEO is sleep deprived. Really important to have things straight. And 9 months is the average lag between a leader's quiet collapse and the company level consequences. So you don't manage hours, you manage energy. So some calendar, very different outputs, depending on which curve you're on. So this graph really demonstrates where you become least productive. So the grind wins the quarter, loses the year, And output here, as you see, peaks around hour 60 and then just starts to dramatically fall off a cliff. So the stretch wins the year, same intensity, different recovery, output plateaus high and holds. So that would be the actual dark bar here, right? And so the blue bar is like where you're just like, oh, this isn't going. So grind looks like leadership. Stretch is leadership. So the grind is you're the only one who can do it. But the stretch is you're the one who designed how it goes and gets done. Decisions are reactive, made in 5 minutes. The stretches, decisions are deliberate, made in the right room with the right people. The grind is recovery, is what happens when you collapse. And so the stretches, recovery is scheduled before you need it, meaning like you're taking days off or an afternoon off, or you actually don't work on anything over the weekend. And that I'm bad at that. I do work on the weekend, but these last 2 weekends, I did not. I did not touch anything. My phone was only to play a game or something fun or read an email. Nothing that was work related. I have to tell you, last week I was a lot more productive and I felt better and I feel better already this week, even though it's only Monday. So the grind is you hide what you're feeling from the team. And the stretch is you're honest with 2 or 3 people. So those that are closest to you that you work with the most. And the grind is the company depends on your stamina. The stretch is the company depends on your judgment, and that's knowing when to step back, when to take time off, when to involve others. There's a lot involved there. So the four disciplines of durable leadership. So none of these are wellness. All of them are operating decisions. So the recovery, the non-negotiable. This is what I was talking about before. Sleep, real time off, days that are not Mondays in disguise. And that's why sometimes my Saturdays can be that way. Treat them like a board commitment, not a reward. So one unbroken day per week, one full week per quarter. So that means every 3 months, you need to take some time off. You can't do a full week, at least like maybe a Friday and a Monday or a Thursday, Friday and a weekend. So clarity is the compass. So 3 things the company is doing this year, 3 things it's not, okay? Reread them when you feel scattered. So written, visible, revisited monthly, not annually. So you always look back and say, what was it I was supposed to be doing? So the third is honest counsel, the mirror. 2 or 3 people outside the organization will tell you the truth about you, not the truth about the company. So just have a standing call, not a crisis call, and a monthly minimum, lunch or a coffee or, drinks after work, that kind of thing. Have those, go-to people that you can just talk to and share, this is how I'm feeling, and, not so much about the business, but just about yourself. So boundaries that hold. So the line, what you will not do, who you will not become, how late is too late, decided in advance, defended on the day. So 3 written rules reviewed when violated. So that's an important one to remember, is that, those separate little boundaries around some of the things that you do. So now, about a year ago, I started on Fridays at 1 on my calendar, booking it like I was done for the day. Then nobody can book a meeting with me. Now I can book a meeting with somebody if I choose to, and sometimes I do. Most times I don't. And I try to stop at 1, but usually it's around 2:30 that I really, step away from my computer. But it's just a good thing to do. And then I do try to schedule a lunch with people, like every other week. And then in the evenings, I have 1 or 2 group Zooms with friends that I can also meet with too. So those keep me, sort of more sane, keep me, true to myself. So 6 signals to watch before the dashboard goes red. So if any 2 appear in the same month, treat it as a strategy issue, not a mood. So you're sleeping fine, but waking up tired. No, I think we've all felt that. So then you've stopped reading anything that isn't urgent. And so sometimes things fly through that you don't see. If it's not urgent, you don't read it. And then, of course, later it becomes urgent. So then you can't remember the last week when you felt like one. So that's how I was feeling. That's how I described the last 2 weekends. I've really made a difference in how I treated them. You're irritable with people who don't deserve it, right? You get snappy, short, that kind of thing. And things that used to interest you have gone gray. Maybe a show that you liked, a sports that you liked, or going for a walk, or doing something in particular, or even something within your business that you really enjoyed doing. So saying yes too fast to avoid saying anything else, that's really important. So 5 questions that are worth a quiet hour. Not like in a journal, but out loud with someone who can push back, meaning that you're meeting with somebody and they can actually kind of give you feedback. And sometimes it's just listening and having you just being able to say how you feel sometimes can make a difference. So the first question would be, if I kept running the company the way I ran it last month, will still want to run it in 3 years? The second one is, what am I doing only because no one has told me that I'm allowed to stop, right? You just keep saying, well, I'm the owner, I just need to keep doing this. Well, no, you can stop, you can. And then who in my life can tell that I'm not okay? And have I made it safe for them to say so, right? And then what would I tell a peer in exactly my situation? And why am I not telling myself, right? And that's, a really common thing I find. And if the company succeeds and I'm a worse version of myself when it does, did I win? Probably not. So, this is kind of to wrap it up. The goal is not to survive the job, it is to do the job well for a long time as someone you would still recognize at the end of it. So, this week, pick up one of the 4 disciplines, make a change, tell one person you trust what you decided. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ina.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let people think about those things.
Can
Well,
I'm sorry. You guys, you two, Audrey and Ina, you two know me well enough to know I've been talking about burnout recovery since you've known me, right?
Yes.
And the beauty of what I just heard is I thought I had let it get as bad as it could be, but I didn't.
Good for
In the
you.
yeah, in the sense that I like to joke that my boss is a lot better at a lot of things than I am. And I am my boss. And so weirdly, as much as I let my life, do all the things that the people pleaser that drains themselves for others will do, in my business, I was different. I don't know. I respected myself more. I had no problem setting boundaries and whatnot. So when I did really hit rock bottom, it was like, yes, I had those clients that drained me, but my business was really the only healthy place I had, like the only healthy space I had given myself in my life, the only
Right.
space that took me into account, my health, my reality. And so weirdly, it wasn't like, yes, the applying how I lived my life to how I ran my business was going to eventually have consequences on my business, but my life caught up to me before my business did. And so
Wow.
I pulled back, and I'm the one that reduced income in my business on purpose. Those first few years, I called it the Great Purge. I think you must have heard me talk about it back then, back in 22, 23. Those first couple of years, I dropped about half my client base. If I went into a meeting and came back out with less energy that I went in, because I noticed that the clients I like working with, yes, I put energy into it, but they circulate it. It's a collaborative. So that energy stays in the room, doesn't get pulled away from me. Right. And so those calls I'd get off and I would have as much, if not more energy from, when you've done something good and, that energy. So that would carry me. And so I, anyway, thank you. It put things in perspective. There's a part of me, I didn't realize I was still beating myself up over taking too long or, all this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. And so you put things in perspective for me. That's really cool. Like I'd never really given myself the credit of basically giving myself an example of health, of close to healthy in who I was in my business. that I could
Right.
apply to who I am as an individual. And yeah, I hadn't seen that until I was sitting here listening to you. So thank you.
Great. Well, that's a good point that you make about, the dichotomy between your business and your personal life. And so, when you spend so much time in your business, it can be, and you, like you say, you try to make yourself as aware and be the best possible leader and individual that you can, as sometimes your personal life does suffer. And so we kind of have to look at it as a whole, which is why it's important to, get that sleep, take some time off, really just do things just for you, that kind of thing. So, how's everybody else feel? Norm, do you have any thoughts? Jody?
I have a quick one. I'm sorry. I have a
Yeah.
quick one. It's
Yeah, sure.
just recently I realized that throughout all of the things and the awareness and the things you've heard me talk about, even with everything that I say and preach and whatnot, I kept working towards being as productive as I used to be,
Mm-hmm.
which is not healthy. It's not a
Right.
worthy goal.
For
And
sure.
so everything that I was trying to do to resource and whatnot was for that purpose. And I just realized that last week. And this weekend, I had the first weekend where I did chores, and yet I still feel like I had a restful weekend because
Sure.
I approached it with how can I make myself what you said about, at some point we just don't want to be here anymore.
Right.
Right. And so I had to force myself to do all the things. And with autism, one of the options is disassociation, where like I
Mm.
can zone out for 3 hours and now the afternoon has gone by and I didn't have to deal with it. Right.
I like that.
Yeah, but then I've got 3 hours of anxiety that catches up to me because I've just
Mm.
wasted 3 hours, right? So it's not healthy. And so
Mm-hmm.
I rephrased the how do I help myself question in how do I make it so I am okay being here and now, which is the opposite of disassociating. And that made all
Right.
the difference in the world this weekend. I did a lot of chores, but like 10 or 15 minutes at a time, taking breaks in between. I improved my space greatly. I had been, and in a 20-foot trailer, it doesn't take long. I was, walking over shit. It was horrible. And so got rid of all the clutter, did all my chores, and
Mm-hmm.
felt restful just because I put my well-being before my ability to be productive as a priority.
Well, yeah, and Jody, what were your thoughts?
Hi, thanks for hosting this. I think I just did some reflection, and I think what you said today resonated because I've been through that, and now I'm starting my own business. So I'm really looking at you to say, okay, let's do a check on all these things in your calendar. Don't schedule things at this time and book lunches for this time. Those kinds of things, that's the source of my burnout previously. So I
Right.
think that was just a good reflection, a good reminder of the to-dos and don'ts. I guess I would say that. And right now, the overwhelm for me is everything has to get done, and I'm not moving as fast as I want to. And so the overwhelm comes, and then you get, your schedule like goes to the wayside, and you don't, to the other person's point, be present here and now. So
Mm.
be present, respect your calendar because you're your, best ally. And I think
Right.
I got to just keep reminding myself of those pieces. But really good reminders today.
Oh, good. I'm glad it helped. And also, for us that, have employees or even some of our clients, we can really be an example for them, not only what not to do, but like what to do.
Right.
Like a lot of my clients, I try to remind them, especially ones that have little ones. It's like you need to take time off because they will never, ever be that age ever again. You can
Mhm.
never make up that time. Yes, you can make up a vacation. Yes, you can do other things, but not the age that somebody grows. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
go to their little league game, go do stuff with them, go to the beach, whatever it may be, in the summer. So yeah, that's very true. So Norm, how about you? What do you think? He's still with us? We don't know. So yeah, so this is just a series that I've
Sorry
been
about
doing.
that.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
on
Yeah.
mute.
Oh, no
No,
problem, Norm.
yeah, no, I'm agreeing with everything. I'm just taking notes here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like early in my career, when I worked for corporate America, I was working 70 hours a week, if not more, coming in too early, leaving in too late, seems like I was never home, that kind of thing. And so, but, all because, oh, my career would get better. Well, it just never got better. you know, that was a mistake. One thing I do tell people now, younger people, I say, okay, if you come in like 15 minutes before everybody else and you leave 15 minutes after everybody else leaves, people will think you're there all the time. you know, and they don't need to, and then, I would.
That's absolutely true. Like, we all think we have to overperform, but corporate America now is everything's performative, right? And performative is not the same as performing. Performative means I look like
right.
whatever it is you want to see. And the one thing like, a lot of things I learned from my childhood are very useful to me now, but my mom could smell a lie from a mile away. And so the only lies I ever got away with were lies of implication, where every word that came out of my mouth was true. And I just let you imply the lie. And that, right? No, because corporate America needs to feel like you care. And the only way they have to calculate it is how productive you are. They've
Right.
forgotten that KPI means that I is indicator. And when you use the word indicator, it means you're not calculating the thing, you're calculating the indicator of the thing that actually matters. Right. And so
Good
there
point.
was a time where when employee productivity or performance went down, a good leader was like, okay, so what's going on with you that you're having problems, that you are not the person I've known? But those days were the days when, like, you kept the same job for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, like, for your whole
Yeah.
career, right? So your boss knew you and actually gave a damn about you. You weren't just a number, right? So now we got these KPIs saying, oh, production's going down, let's crack the whip. Instead of realizing that production going down was an indicator of employee satisfaction and addressing the actual problem, we make the workplace more and more miserable. Like, that joke, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This is corporate America now. That's their flag. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Right.
And so I love that. I love the idea of introducing that impression that I'm doing what you think I'm doing without actually burning myself out.
Right.
I love that there's some, because I won't touch corporate America with a 10-foot pole, but I love the idea that someone like you is out there poking at corporate America in that way, giving people tools to be like, okay, so this is the things they calculate. This is how to imply that you're doing it without actually spending the time and energy burning yourself out to get the promotion and the this and the that you deserve with just your regular work without having to burn yourself out.
Right.
I get excited, but I love that. I want to hear more tricks like that to mislead corporate America mindset.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Well, another one I have that I used to do when I was actually I was a project manager more. And so I was in a healthcare situation in a hospital, and we were installing a cost accounting system. Well, I was responsible for overseeing that, right? Being the project manager. And so it involved a lot of different personalities and individuals. And we have these constant meetings, like twice a week. And it would have like doctors, it would have people on the high level, it would have people, the doers that are actually doing it. It would have IT, it would have finance, accounting, all of that stuff. And it became really evident to me that in the meetings, there was this jockeying between some of the different departments for who is more important or whose thoughts meant the most or should be listened to the most, right? And so one in particular was my boss and the boss of two other people in IT. And they never would agree on anything. And I think that it didn't matter if they really did or not. They just would not agree. So I started having pre-meetings with the two people from IT and said, this is what I want to accomplish in this meeting. So can you help me by, sort of priming your boss for that, and I'll prime mine, and let's see how that goes. So it went a little better, not a lot, but then I realized that I needed to let them, they didn't need to be there every time, because there really wasn't always decisions that had to be made. It was more like just keeping people up to date type stuff. So I finally said, Miss X and Miss Y, you don't have to always be here in the meetings. I know your time is really valuable and you have a lot of things to do. How about if we just make sure to invite you when the major decisions need to be made, and we'll just keep you updated on the side. And they're like, oh, we love that. We don't have to come to another meeting. And all I really wanted them was to not come to meetings. I just don't come. You don't help. So but that worked out beautifully. And to this day, I'm still friends with the two people from IT. They're still very good friends of mine. We worked in different departments for bosses that didn't like each other. So it's just one of those things. But
that one's it's on the presentation, which is a lesson I learned from hospitality. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So it's really, like we're doing it more for them and not for us, but really I was doing it for me. But but yeah, corporate America. But when you have your own business and then you're working with clients that have their business, it really changes the dynamics, and it changes how you look at things, and how we can share and help each other, because we're not all sitting in the same room, we're not on a cubicle, we're mostly remote, 9 times out of 10. And so it's really developing a whole different way of working together, and almost a culture. And and so you need to also have a joke or laugh or talk about something, in the beginning. Like here's a good one. 2 weeks ago, there was a vendor that was being very insistent about late payments that had been made by one of my clients. And so we figured out, they wanted all this information. And so we gave them all this information. I did this really extensive cash flow, how we could pay them over time, but they wanted everything now. Well, the guy just didn't have the money, but he would over time, the next couple months. And so, we felt really confident with that. And it's turning out that it's true. And so this guy, I went to a meeting with the vendor and my boss, who really loves everybody, but says that he hates this guy. So we get on the call, and I realize he's a real numbers guy. So I start talking to him in numbers, talking to him about different things on the cash flow. If we do this, because he said, well, we could release some orders for you, because they needed a product in order to install something in order to collect from the customer, right? So if they're not going to give them the product, we don't have the money to pay them, right? It's that simple. But they just refuse to see that. But so then they said, okay, well, we can give you, like $100,000 and in product release. And I said, okay. And then I had scheduled very intentionally the first 2 months a pretty low payback payment, like for the things that were over 120, the things that were over 60, over 90, right? So in the next 2 months, so they were real minimal. But then to pick it up when the sales had really picked up and the cash had come in. And so I said, okay. I said, so if we make this payment to you this month, which is July, and then you release 100,000 orders, if we make that payment, plus we maybe make another 10, 20,000 or $30,000 payment to you, will you then re-release more? Because he kept saying it was only going to do the 150 and never change it. He goes, oh yeah, because then it will be down to a certain amount, right? And he said, oh, for sure, definitely. So then he said, well, I'd like to get together monthly and just make sure we're on track. And I said, well, I think it would be more productive if we met every week, just for like 15 minutes, just to touch base and see what's happening, make sure you got your payment, that kind of stuff. And he loved that. So, because that made him feel like he was part of our process, that, he was actually helping us, which he wasn't at all. But, and so when we met last Tuesday, he came on the call, and he's in Washington. And so I was the state of Washington. And so when he came on, I said, oh, how you doing? Is it pretty hot up there? And all this. And all of a sudden, just started the meeting on a really light note, a really personal note. And then when, my boss came, or my client came on, then, we started the conversation, and it went super well. Everybody was really happy. It was just only about 12 minutes long. And so I made sure, though, to make sure that my client made that first payment, which we did last week, so that this week's Tuesday call will go well. And so when we got off the call, my client, zoomed me back really quick, and he said, so who was that guy? This is not the guy that I've been dealing with that was being so hard. He's like willing to do anything with us. Like, you even said, oh, I'll release some extra orders if you have some clients that really need it, that are really, on the verge of canceling. Plus, then he shared with us, the vendor, that there was one product that's very popular that they can't get the product for it. It's not going to be like till November till they get it. Well, that's not going to work for the clients that signed up for it. So we're looking for alternative vendors, but in the meantime, I think he's willing to do a little bit more because they can't provide us with this premium product that we like to sell. So, but it's just an example of, how you could just sort of, have things be a little personal, a little light to start a meeting on the right foot. So, rather than, okay, you haven't released the orders, now we can't do, this whole adversarial type thing. So now he's my new best friend, but I still don't trust him. So Audrey, you're back with us? No? Sorry? Oh, I guess not. I thought Audrey's internet went down, so she had to step away for a moment. So, well, thanks everybody. If there are other questions, hopefully this was, thank you, Jody, for your kind words. This is valuable for you guys. And just a little reminder. I mean, I think it's not anything that none of us don't know, right? But sometimes we just need to be reminded of it. And like I said, I needed to remind myself too. So frequently I have to say, okay, you're giving out this advice. Are you taking it? So, and I'm really grateful that I did these last 2 weeks. It's just made a big difference. So take an afternoon off, take a little time off, do something fun. Or even if it's like maybe like one place that I'll leave you with this. One place that I worked at was a software company. And so they like to do fun things all the time. And so on Fridays, what I ended up doing was then having like a root beer float Friday. So like around 2:33, we'd have meet in the lunchroom, we'd do root beer floats, and then everybody could go home a little early. So it just started their weekend on a top, a really good note. So it was just positive that way. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Thanks, Anik. Thanks, Norm, for joining. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the feedback, Anik.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a great week, everybody.